substantial budget deficit based on level services that we're going to have to address. So I thought it was very timely, since we had talked about a reduction in the overtime budget, to have the chief come in and tell us why that's not a good idea. That's above and beyond the point that you made, which was very valid, to make a cut of that amount, you know, with 7/12 of the year gone by, didn't make good sense.
I agree.
Now, putting that aside, it's good that we know what we would tap to cover our obligation to fund the balance of the Quinn bill, so. But I still would like to hear from the chief, because sooner or later, we're gonna have to deal with this issue anyway.
Right, but you know, as we develop our budgets, and we have a whole budgetary hearing process for that, we have our own workshops for that, you know, we've got to take it individual department by department anyway.
I'm disappointed that he took the time to write the memo and can't attend.
We have, just for informational purposes, the fact that the police department budget, that there are spending measures that become effective in January and February, that's not unusual. If you look at the history of the last 2 years, we've put spending measures in place, and the department members can attest that each year in January and February, the police department enacts certain spending measures. And those are typically things that are done. They're not something that the board has been involved in the past in a public debate and discussion about that. It was simply a fact of being done because we need to bring the budget in on target. So given that how we've dealt with those issues in the past, my reaction this evening was that there was really not a need for the chief to be present. If there was, I apologize, and I regret the fact that he's not here this evening to address the board.
So you're confident that those funds are available?
I am.
And by the time we get to March 14th, we will have an agreed-upon number for the...
Yes, for that purposes, the estimated Quinn bill exposure for 2010, 2011 is $427,000. We went back and we looked at the numbers that were in your packet previously. That's on the high end, and on the low end, the amount would be $405,400. So we did meet with the union. We certainly will apprise them of the individual amounts for each officer. We'll be happy to engage in a discussion with them as to how that calculation came about, but that's the dollar amount that we do have.
Okay. You anticipate having an agreement with the union prior to?
I hope so. I hope so, Selectman Delaney. I think, as I said a week ago, I think it's critical to go to town meeting with an understanding and agreement that is important to show that the parties are unified.
I agree.
I can't emphasize that that's critical.
Yeah. I think it could be a disaster otherwise.
Just going back to the letter. Going back to the letter, the chief talks about the middle of January, they were already 75% through their overtime budget. Me being new, so I apologize for taking a few moments to just give me a little background. Is that historically usually where they are about this time of year?
I mean,
can't speak. 5 months left.
I can't speak to the factors whether it's 75%, but I can tell you that for the past 2 fiscal years, the department run rate has been greater in the first 6 months of the year than it is in the last 6 months of the year. The reason being is that typically the shifts are being filled during the summer months when officers are on vacation and taking time off and such. And there's a greater need, obviously, for that during the months of July, August, and September than there is at this particular time of year. And typically, the department with crime, there are a number of crimes that occur during the warmer summer months that aren't typical of this time of year. So there is a disproportionate spending pattern that does take place with the department with overtime, and historically that's the way it's been done.
Just seems like an awfully big number for this late in the year, but again, I don't know.
We've also had the kind of winter that has put some stress on those resources too.
Yeah, I didn't read that in his comment about it, and I see he talks about it somewhere later on in the letter, and then it may have made more sense to me, but okay. That's fine. Maybe when we see the chief, he can just give us a little more insight.
I'd be happy to have him speak with the board.
You know, I'm not a big fan of using the overtime to make this successful, but at the same time, we only have 25% less to get us through the next 4.5 months. This is a really concern of mine. So,
Further discussion on
we
this?
have a bigger problem on hands.
Michael, you all set?
No, I just want to make one comment if I could, since we're on the subject. Since we got so many of the police officers here, I want to make sure you know my perspective on this whole thing. $60,000, we'll get it worked out. I'm not concerned about that in the least. I'll tell you what I am concerned about, though, is where do we go from here, okay? I've been trying to spend the last several months getting myself educated on the Quinn Bill and try to learn about how the state treats the towns related to the Quinn Bill, and I've learned a lot, and it concerns me tremendous because it's a clear indication that the state doesn't really have a big buy-in on this continuing education for law enforcement. I am a fan of it, and I support it, and I think it's highly needed, and I will support it. But I don't think Quinn Bill's the answer. So I think it would be nice if we could start some discussion, not a labor discussion, a philosophy about, or at least a discussion about continuing education for law enforcement in the town of North Reading. Do we believe in it? Do we buy into it? And then how do we handle that going forward for 2012, 13, 14? And for a lot of these young officers that are going to be here for many years, they should know that we're committed to that. And if we're not, if it's not the Quinn Bill, then what is it we're going to do? Or we're not going to do it at all. Because I'll tell you what, I don't support the Quinn Bill. And at this point, I think we're wasting our time with the Quinn Bill. I think we really should be fair to you and all the officers that we either make a commitment towards it or we don't. Because I can't see anything good coming from the Quinn Bill anytime, unless you guys have some insight. Maybe you guys want to stand up and give me some insight to where do you see the Quinn Bill going in 2012 and beyond.
I may speak as the union rep.
Mr. Murray.
Say that we're.
Can I
Could
get your
you come
name?
up to the podium just so that our listening audience, or viewing audience can hear you?
Teamsters, I'm the negotiator for the police. Just on the Quinn Bill, obviously, we don't know where it goes from here, as we talked about numerous times. But they are all educated, majority of them are educated. I think that's what you want in the town of North
Yeah.
Reading. I think that we're open to working this out. We've talked about it numerous times with Greg. It is what it is. We're all stuck with the situation we're in. Financially, we understand it, but at the end of the day, we just want to do what's right, and we're willing to work it out whatever way we can. We're open to any type of discussions. We've never once took the position that stick it, it's the way it is, we want, you know what I mean, we're not into that. We're not here to tell you that. We're here to listen to what you have to say with Greg through the attorneys. But at the end of the day, we want to be straightened out, get it fixed. We want to fix it forever. We don't want to be in the same boat 6 months, a year from now, like you said. You guys want to fix it for 2012, 13, 2020. That's what we want also. And if we can work it out, we're willing to do that. Just one more point of clarification, and maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think the chief was, I think the chief was told not to be here tonight. And he's on the other side of the table from me, but I just give it the respect to him, I think.
Who told him that?
That's what I was told, he was told not to be here,
Who told you that?
my officers. So,
I'd like to know who told the chief not to be here tonight.
So I'm just.
At least three of us expected him to be here. And I don't, I'd like to know.
On one other point, you see some of the stuff in this letter. We are running short shifted right now. We're not filling vacancies.
We know.
And, you know, we talk about snow, I hear you talk about a million different things. I know you guys have the toughest job in the world. I'm not here to say I want your job. At the end of the day, you need to cover these shifts because it's all about safety. I mean, the kids in the street, you know, at night, you know, we're running with one guy up the other end of town and one guy on the other end of town. Something happens in the middle of town, there's another disturbance, we're in for a nightmare. So I know we're all in the same boat. Like I said, you're in a situation where you're trying to find the dollars, but you gotta figure it out when it comes to the public safety. I mean, I can't tell you how to do your jobs, and you guys are here for a reason, but at the end of the day, it's all about safety, so it's really all I
No, but for us to figure out our job, and just to kind of go on the point about Sean, is the chief and I don't know, maybe it's just a breakdown in communication, but he needs to be part of these discussions, because this is some tough stuff. And you know what, you don't want us figuring it all out on our own, do you?
I agree.
I mean,
I'd be glad.
we need to be part of this together. That's why
Should've been.
I'm opening up the discussion. It doesn't have to get solved tonight, but I'd like you to walk away tonight, to go back and put together, and forget about the money. Let's just talk about the concept of continuing education for law enforcement. That has to be addressed. What's the right thing to do? And if you guys as a force believe it's the Quinn bill, then we need to get Brad Jones in here, and we need to talk to him and get up there and lobby and get it fixed, or we come up with our own concept that we think is right and reasonable and sustainable for the taxpayer and right for the officers in this town for the long term.
I think
That's
if
tough.
I can make one suggestion?
Yes,
When
please.
we have these discussions, some of you that are at this table should be there. I think that, Mr. O'Leary can tell you this. When we have these discussions, and I'm not knocking Greg or the attorney, but it's always let us go back and see what they have to say. If we have some people there that have the clout to make the decisions, I have the clout from our side to make the decisions. So I'm asking you, maybe you can have one or two people from the board be in those discussions. Because you know what? You know what you can do and you can't do. And maybe it's not relayed through, and I'm not knocking Greg, and I don't want, put him on the
I don't think
table,
you are.
But at the end of the day, we need somebody there to be able to tell us what you absolutely think you can do and what you can't do. And then we go from there. So we gotta find that middle ground, and then we go from there. All right? Thank you.
Thank you.
Just as far as the Quinn bill itself, I mean, the concept was great and it's worked for years. And, you know, where it's broken down is that the state has not met their responsibility in funding their 50%. If you recall, Tom, at our last negotiation session when we settled the last contract, members of the board that were sitting here at the time, the administration, committed to meeting the town's obligation 100%, which was the 50%, regardless of what the legislature did or didn't do. And that's what the handshake was on, and that's what the agreement was on. And we've, and I hope that you haven't lost sight, and I hope that you acknowledge and give credit to the board here for at least meeting our obligations under the contractual agreement that we had with you. Because that's what it was. We felt that it was important enough, since we were funding that portion of it anyway, regardless of what they were doing, that we were willing to meet that obligation regardless of what they did. And then they went ahead and did what they did, which was a terrible thing, and basically resulted in a pay decrease for the members of our police department against the wishes of this board, and against the wishes of the taxpayers of the Commonwealth at that particular time. But we met our obligation, and I would hope that you would acknowledge that. I, for one, don't fault the union for filing the suit that they did, even though we had the agreement that we had, because it's incumbent upon you to protect the interests of your membership, and a judge has ruled at this particular point the way that he ruled. So, and as a good faith gesture again, we felt it was important going forward to meet our obligations, which we've been doing now for the last month or so, and then as a result, we're having a town meeting to make up the residual in relation to the judgment. But we're still reserving our rights to appeal it, because we still think there's some room for interpretation that may come out otherwise. But in the meantime, nobody here sitting at this table, the police union was the first union to come to the table and agree to a 0% increase, and that we were extremely grateful for, and set the tone for the rest of the negotiations for all of our other labor agreements. And they were the first ones to get hurt by the legislature as far as taking a pay decrease. So everybody here feels badly about that. This is nothing more than what you were entitled to as to what we're trying to fund. But to the point of, is it going to be the Quinn bill or something else moving forward? Again, there's a whole bunch of nuances that we have to jump through, and hoops that we have to protect our interest in case the legislature does step up and decide to fund the Quinn bill, because that's what's on the books right now. Whereas if we set up another, educational incentive program under a separate contractual agreement, what's the funding source and at what level? So those are the types of things that we have to weigh and put on the scale and see if we can come to some sort of happy medium. The Quinn bill has worked very well for the North Reading Police Department. I was in support of it when it was initially proposed, because I think it was important for us to get an educated police department and workforce. It's worked real well. We have great officers here, and I think the education level and the services that we have is indicative of the educational level that we have. So it bodes well, and again, our accreditation, again, is very important. So Time is of the essence, and we need to get together quickly and come to some sort of an agreement.